training manuals and set up the testing for San Francisco firefighters, and became the only state certified pump operator instructor for the San Francisco Fire Department. And left San Francisco, went to the city of San Mateo, where I was the training battalion chief. And I was there for almost 6 years. And once again, had to, I was started because of a union grievance against the city for lack of training. And one of the first things I found out is a lot of the pump operators really didn't understand their own pump, mobile pump. So there was a lot of, start from point A and work on that. So this looks like it's, what happened here? Hello, Tammy. Okay, I'm gonna ask. Okay, I'm gonna ask one of the engineers to come up unless you need me. Okay. All right, and you take care of yourself. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye. Yes. All right. Yeah. Tammy's out front. She's driving a red, new Cadillac.
Okay. I'm getting somebody on there now.
SUV. And she says she's like a FedEx truck or something next to her or something.
Okay.
But she's right in front. Tammy. Apparently Tammy had a little accident and she fell. So she was kind of shaken up.
I'm gonna go grab her.
No, I got Steve on it.
Driving in the city takes a lot of fearlessness nowadays. Being a pedestrian too. So I've been teaching the high-rise fire safety director course at City College, actually right down the street from you guys, at Kearney in Washington, and then also at Local 39 for 16 years. The State Fire Marshal's Office adopted NFPA 25, which is this newer textbook, and this is the go-to textbook that you're required to have on site in the engineering office should the State Fire Marshal come down and visit you. They're going to want to see a copy of this.
Do we get one of those books?
No.
No, we gotta. Okay.
You have to order it. But I'll give you all the instructions on how to order it.
Okay, very good.
I've been doing this for quite a while, so you almost don't really need a reason to write notes. So, but this is the go-to. And about 40 other states have adopted this as state fire code. So it comes under the category of Title 19 California Code of Regulations. So it is it's a law now. And there's two types of people who can come in and work on and do the inspection on the fire pump. One is a C16 contractor, that McClanahan, there's a bunch of other companies that come in. Fire protection engineers who you might have on contract who are going to come in and do your annual and your 5-year. And they can also do the, do you have a diesel or electric, or both?
Generator?
Pump.
Electric.
Electric. Okay, so I'm going to comment about electric because previously NFPA said it's supposed to be inspected weekly, and then in 2013 they changed it to monthly, and then 2014 they changed it back to weekly. And I'll explain what's going on with that. All right. So there's a C16 contractor. Now in the law, it also provides that the owner or management of the building that has the fire pump can have their own staff do the weekly or monthly inspection. you're saving yourself minimum $200, $250 every time you would hire somebody to come in by doing this yourself. My own opinion is you're going to get to know the pump room and the jockey pump better than the guy you would contract out to come in and do it. Is that your intent?
Yes.
Okay. So, because it's your machine, your pump, your device. So you're going to know its idiosyncrasies, and let's face it, they're like gardeners. They come in, you pay them so much a month, and they come in and spend 15 minutes and they're out of there. So do they really, really look at it and take care of it? Not in my opinion. All right, so it's better to have it done in-house. So you're going in the right direction. So the primary tool we're going to use today is this one, and Steve is getting them. So you're each going to have, here it is.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you so much. Here's a goodie bag, I think. Yep. So all those things. And we'd like to see you sign in on the roster. And give you each one of these. Seth. And your name is Dave. And you are
James.
James. And you have somebody else coming, right?
Yeah, the chief, he's
All right.
in the middle of something right now.
Okay. All right. Now, in addition,
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, now when you said diesel electric, diesel, we also have it in emergency backup. So would that be considered
Huh?
diesel as well? Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's normal.
okay.
Yeah, in most buildings, I have to be careful about
Is that what you
most.
meant by diesel and electric?
Well, yeah, you have a diesel and electric fire pumps.
No, we only have an electric
Oh,
fire
okay,
pump.
no, we-
Our diesel is our emergency backup power.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And you have a diesel generator.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, different animal.
Okay, different, so that's not what you're referring, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's very common in San Francisco, we see both an electric that starts up first, and if that can't keep up with the demand for supplying sprinklers and wet standpipes, or if the electric should, for one reason, fail, there's a diesel fire pump backup.
Hmm, okay.
So it's a fire pump that's supplied by a diesel generator, powered rather. So there's two. Now, the test is now 50 questions, which is new this year. 50 questions, it was 30. And I'm going to give you most of the material that you need to study from. Actually, all the material you're going to need to study from. And what I'm here for today is to prepare you to take the test, the written test, 50 questions. So it's not a hands-on class. That's understood?
Mhm.
Okay, I hope so. Now, part of all this, Local 39 sent me to Peerless Fire Pumps in Minneapolis, and I spent a week there at their pump technician class.
Hey guys, how's it
All
going?
right.
Sorry I'm late, fellas.
That's okay, we're
please,
pretty
stop,
much
stop.
just gotten done.
You want to sit there?
Yeah, I'll sit over there. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you. Put all this over here.
Okay, we'll move the goodies around.
Excellent.
Okay. And I'm Tom Murray. Ask questions whenever you want. The primary tool we're using today is this. All right. I was just explaining to the guys that I have a background in the fire service. A lot of it had to do with mobile fire pumps, training, writing articles, training manuals on how to operate mobile fire pumps. And I've been doing this now for about 6 years. And I attended Peerless Fire Pumps in Minneapolis to take the fire pump technician course. So, the world of fire pumps, whether it's mobile or stationary, the basic theory and operation is similar. It's just that building stationary pumps. They don't have a drivetrain, they don't have 6 wheels, they don't have those type of things. But a lot of the same principles and practices are similar. Probably, if you already know how to operate your fire pump and you're pretty adept at it, understand the theory, I could take you down the street in 30 minutes, teach you how to operate a mobile fire pump. It's that similar, okay? My email address is here, so if you have questions after today, shoot them through Dennis or your chief engineer, and give you an answer. Most of the questions you probably have been asked before. If I can't give you a good answer, I don't make it up, I will forward your email to the State Fire Marshal's office and they'll respond back to both of us. All right. Most of it has to do with the legislation of the law. All right. So, page 3 is pretty much just boilerplate that you can read at your convenience. One of the benefits you have is you have a group of people who are going to take the test. So you can shoot questions to each other, study, get in the pump room together. Has anybody actually run the pump yet?
It's not a group test.
Has anybody run
This
the
pump
pump?
hasn't been turned over to us yet.
Okay, that's kind of a good thing. I was mentioning to Rich earlier, my recommendation is McClanahan was the installer, correct?
Correct.
And do we know who the manufacturer is of the pump?
Actually, I don't.
Okay.
So
The way it's supposed to work by law is McClanahan, the pump, a representative of the pump manufacturer, the city fire marshal's office will be here, fire protection engineer, one of their civilian protection engineer geeks, and your building representative, which is probably you, is all going to be in the same room, and they're going to run the pump and make sure it meets the acceptance test that the pump was designed for. And everybody signs off on it. Now, in doing that, my recommendation is to make sure that the pump manufacturer, maybe through McClanahan, comes in and answers all your questions about the operation of the fire pump, doing the inspection process. And with electric, it's not real super complicated. All right, diesel's another animal. So you're kind of lucky you have an electric if you don't have a diesel. And go through the exact procedures that they would recommend. And probably over the months, you're going to probably adapt that to best practices here. And I'll explain a little bit more on that a little bit later. But that would be the strategy I would suggest. Now, let's go to page 5. Now, the new book is this one. This was the previous book. You can see it's a little bit thicker, the newer one. Most of the changes have been in sprinkler systems, standpipes, and some other parts of the water-based fire extinguishing system. The fire pump portion has changed a little bit, about 20% of it's changed from the older book to this one. They've now included the jockey pump. They didn't used to, because in NFPA 20, which is probably what you're familiar with, because this has to do with the installation of your fire pump. This used to be part of the reference material. We had them take it out purposely, because the law is all about the fire pump inspection. It's not about installation. This is a reference book, though, that you should have, I would have in your library, especially during the break-in period. And you want to look at this book and just make sure, McClanahan's good company. My brother actually was a plumber, worked for them for years. But some plumbers have done things wrong. So you want to make sure the piping is right and some of the other things are done correctly. So if you have any doubt, look it up to here and have them explain, why is it this way? Don't hesitate doing that, right? You have an HVAC background, so you understand you have to make sure that people who install it did it according to the design and that it's operating according to the specs, right?
Right.
And you probably have had situations where that didn't happen. correct?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, it's found out. So where to get this book? Some people have gotten it off Amazon, or you can call right up here B&I Books. Handout right here. Now, I don't know what your budget is here. By law, you only need one to keep in the engineering office. So that should a state fire marshal inspector visit your building, which they will at some point, they may ask to see this. Because this is the reference material that you're supposed to be using when it comes to doing any minimal maintenance or inspection. This is your go-to book, all right? Can I give you one of the questions on that test? You might?
Oh, absolutely, go ahead.
Okay.
Prefer 30.
Actually, it's 50 now.
It's 50 now.
Yep.
Yeah,
2 years ago.
I know it was 30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all right.
I know it blew us out of the water when they showed up and gave us 50, and I said, you didn't tell me. Tom, we don't have to tell you.
You're losing your passion.
You gotta have that book on site at the facility?
On site,
Okay. Because we have another building with another fire pump as well.
another book,
Another book, okay?
yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
So, question, NFPA 25, 2013 California edition is based on what? NFPA 2010, 2011, 2012? Which of those three? Right here, 2011. Okay, they actually asked that. What does that have to do with inspecting a fire pump? Nothing. But I'm just giving you a flavor that they ask silly ass questions too. Okay? So B&I Books, you can order either by phone, there's an 800 number, or by going online. All right? Now they cost about $100 each.
So that's the name of the book right here?
Yes, yes.
Just tell them that?
Yes.
Read the whole
Now,
line.
Dennis,
Yes.
you may hold off ordering it right
Okay.
away, all right? Because I
Okay.
have another solution for you.
Okay. Okay.
Going to the State Fire Marshal's office. Do you have an apprentice?
Yes.
Good. My background is training. I'm still a trainer. When I had probationary firefighters, I utilized them, really utilized them. Not just for them to learn the skill and the trade, but to do some work. My advice would be pull in that apprentice and say, I want you to become familiar with the Office of the State Fire Marshal's website, fire engineering, as it has to do with the fire pump. Now, what does that mean? It means going to it once, looking over it, what are the inspection forms, and then periodically, like once a year, because they don't send out an email saying, hey, we've updated a form. They don't do that. It's up to you to keep track of it. So just periodically take a look at it and see, hey, have they changed anything? Have they changed the practices of the test? Have they changed the practices of the certification? That type of thing.
Don't you think every 6 months?
Yeah, at the most, at the most.
Make it a PM.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they work, yeah, exactly. So, by following these instructions, this takes you right to it. Fire engineering, state OSFM, structural fire engineering takes you right into that website. You don't want to just go to the fire marshal's website. It's huge, and to get to here could be frustrating. Very, okay. Now, in your packet, there's the necessary forms that you need to get started. All right? There are other forms, that have to do with sprinklers, have to do with standpipes, have to do with foam systems. You're not interested in that now for this certification. Should you become familiar with it as an engineer, I would say yes. Because who's really responsible to make sure the sprinklers operate, that the standpipes operate? You guys. And that burden falls to you. Yes, you have a 5-year and you have a 1-year. But you can do everything in the meantime, correct?
And we bring Simplex out even for our quarterlies.
Simplex?
We hire them as an umbrella.
Okay. Well,
That was the director.
yeah. But do you guys actually look at your standpipe valves and outlets and things? See, I would recommend that.
We have in the past exercised
I would
the
act-
stems and everything, lube it up, everything.
Yeah. It was a rude awakening when I taught at Alta Bates in Oakland. They weren't familiar with their standpipe systems, and they didn't understand that they were in violation of state law and the city of Oakland Fire Department. Because once upon a time, Oakland was like San Francisco, they had 3-inch outlets, all right? Well, Oakland had to change to be compliant with state law. San Francisco said, no, we're a charter city, we're gonna keep it the way it is, 3-inch, which is what you should have. So Oakland had some 3-inch, so if Alta Bates had had a fire, Oakland Fire Department wouldn't have been able to hook up to their standpipe outlets. Now they were saying, well, we had a company that was supposed to check all that. No, didn't happen, didn't happen. Plus they had tried to retrofit some dry standpipes, which means there's no water in it, to wet standpipes, and didn't complete the work. So some of those standpipes were inoperable. So I'm just warning you, okay? I'm in a lot of buildings, I teach the high-rise class, and one of the things every student has to produce is a hazard assessment of their buildings. And oftentimes engineers, hey, something was wrong with our standpipes and some other things. So just be aware, whatever you contract out, you have to follow them. Is that not the case? At least in my experience. So, the forms, which we are going to go over individually. Now, the very first form, and the ones I indicated in red, I've given you copies of that form. The ones that are in black ink, that go on to page 6, I didn't provide you, but you can get them from the Fire Marshal's website. Very doable. Okay? The very first form we're going to look at is on page 7. Two things. What you're going to apply for using this form is a fire pump certification. That will stay with you as long as you continue to make the annual payment to the State Fire Marshal's office. Whether you pay it individually or whether Chinese Hospital sends a checkup with all the renewal notices, that's up to in-house, all right? Now, are you Chinese Hospital employees?
Local 39, but straight through Chinese.
Okay, because some guys,
No ABM.
okay, some guys work for Able and their company, they have to get that worked out.
Yeah.
All right. So this is for you, $80. So it's $80 when you fill out this application. We're going to go over the completing of it so that that's done correctly. They've actually had some returned because they were missing information or things were incorrect. You're going to fill this out and send it to the State Fire Marshal's office. You guys can probably send it in one envelope and one check, as long as the dollars match the number of certs that are attached. That's going to go to the cashier's office up there, the State Fire Marshal. It sits there for a couple of weeks, and then they notify the structural fire engineering side of the fire marshal's office, and they'll actually set a date for a test. Now, I used to be able to, and David probably knows this, be able to organize a test here in San Francisco. They've taken that away from us.
Wow, they're making it tough for you.
They are. Now, there's reasons for this that are non-public reasons. They're going to develop a third party, not a State Fire Marshal's Office company, that are actually going to set up testing locations and administer the test throughout California. Right now, there's only 2 locations, Sacramento and their LA office, which isn't obviously very user-friendly. So I used to be able to coordinate a site here in the city and have all the engineers show up. They drive down from Sacramento, administer the test, and it saved a lot of engineer hours and a lot of frustration from driving up to
We had
Sacramento.
one in Oakland last time, was it Oakland?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's that?
So unfortunately, it just blew me away that they're doing that. And part of it has to do with their desire to have a third party, but also it has to do with their in-house staff changes. The previous staff person, Vicky, she's like a Marine Corps drill instructor.
Yes. She's tough.
No engineer can intimidate her. Well, the new person now, she's not up to that.
I got you.
So that's my theory, they changed it because of the new person. So, we can't fight it, sorry. Now, you're going to send it all to the CAL FIRE, Office of the State Fire Marshal, and the process here. Your name. I would recommend use your name that's on your driver's license. Keep it the same. I've dealt with the fire marshal's office as a firefighter, as a company officer, as a chief officer many, many times. And if I use Tom one time, Thomas the next time, Tommy the third time, they hand file everything. And your paperwork can get lost. So just keep it the same. Keep it the same. Address. You could use this address where you work or your home address. The question I have, are you really getting mail when it's sent here to you? I never could count on that where I worked. So when it came to certifications and things I had to renew, I always used my home address. So that's your call, all right? Because they're going to send you a renewal notice every year prior to September 1st. And that renewal notice is going to tell you you need to renew. And you need to verify your name, your address, your contact email, phone number, and your fire pump certification number that you're going to get when you take the test. Everything's cool. You prepare a check and you send it off to the State Fire Marshal's office. And you're renewed for the next year. All right? They want to receive payment between September 1st and November 1st. If that payment gets there November 3rd, you get penalized another $40. So those dates become important. If you go past December 31st, you're expired. Guess what? You have to apply it again and you have to take the test again. All right? So once you get into the cycle and you keep renewing each year, the likelihood of you taking a test is like your driver's license. Not likely. It just would be impossible for them to be doing that annually. You're just going to be into the system, okay? Unless it expires. If your address changes, you have the responsibility to notify them of an address change. All right? And I've had some engineers flip out when they've expired and they missed the notice, one reason or another. It's not the state's fault, it's the individual's fault. Okay? Now, telephone number. They're state employees. If you use your home address, they're not going to leave a voicemail. Probably not, because they want to make sure they contact you. So my recommendation is your cell phone, because they want to talk to you. I do not recommend the engineering office. I've called engineering office and I've learned not to leave voicemails either, because I never get a call back, you know? And I'm very reluctant to talk to an engineer and leave a note that's meant for the chief engineer. The message just doesn't get communicated. So they know that too. So consider your cell phone. Driver's license, that's explanatory, your hair, eyes, blah, blah, blah. Now, down here you see an FP number and a line. That's going to be blank, because that is your fire pump number. You don't know what that is yet. The day you take the test, they're going to give you that, if you pass it. If you pass the test. And it's simply the person, the engineer who took the test, the first was number 1. That was his number. The one who took it 500 was 500. So it's just in sequence that way. If somebody's cert expires, that number's never reused. They just keep going in numerical order. Okay? And that number is yours. And it's like your driver's license, it's yours until you don't renew. Okay? That's up to you. Now your employer, Chinese Hospital, and the address here. Able guys, they want to put down Able. No, it's not Able. It's the company you work for, that address. So here it's easy, all right? One thing I would suggest is not to, doubt anything, but you just want to have everything go through smoothly, is you fill them out and maybe you just check them, each one, that they're complete. Signature and date, okay? Then you can put them all in one envelope and mail them off to this address. The check would be made out to CAL FIRE OSFM, which it states right down here.
What's his concern number?
Concern number, good question. Concern number is over here is the same thing as the concern number. You're applying for your fire pump certification. Chinese Hospital, or whoever owns it, needs to apply for a limited L license. What that limited L license is saying is that I'm, as the owner of this building, am going to hire trained, experienced, capable people to operate the fire pump. That's what it really says. Therefore, the owner takes responsibility and liability should something go wrong. Okay? That's what the L license is all about. They also have to make application, which we'll go over next, and they have to renew it every year. But once again, it saves a lot of money if that's part of your intent versus hiring outside. You save a lot of money. Okay, you can check the going rate. Last time I checked, it was about $250 every time a fire protection engineer came in to start your pump up for electric for 10 minutes. So, yeah.
Take them an hour to park around here.
They probably charge you for that too. So, okay, any questions about this application is all answered on the next page. Everything I covered. All right? Are you all good to go? Okay. Now, I put in this is the State Fire Marshal's exam policy, really in a nutshell. If they schedule you for a date and a time, and it doesn't work out for you, contact them as soon as possible. and they'll reschedule you. If Rich, you're set to go for a certain date and time and you can't make it, you can't send Seth in your place. You can't do that. It's got to be whoever gets that letter at that date, that time. And when you show up, you're going to have to show them your photo ID, which is typically your driver's license. All right. And on the day of the test, just go up yourself. There's 2-hour parking right in front of their building. There's no meters. It's just 2-hour parking. Usually parking is not a problem within a block of the building. And it's just a 1-story building. And you go in, typical receptionist, and they'll have you just hang out in the lobby, which is kind of small until they take everybody in. You might be with a group of 5, you might be in a group of 12. You might have some people there who are going to take the state fire extinguisher certification at the same time. And they just hand out the different tests. And when you're in the classroom, your cell phone, leave it in your car or turn it off and leave it in your pocket. Because you don't want it to ring or vibrate, they'll tell you to leave. So don't, oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, you're leaving.
Vicky would have kicked your butt on that one.
You know her, huh?
Literally, you're gone, done, test's over for you, go.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. And once you sit down, they give you your test, don't talk. Don't say, hey, where do you work? You know, don't do any of that. Because they're not going to try and interpret what you're saying or what you're talking about. Some engineers will be done in 15, 20 minutes. Maybe not with 50 questions, but when it was 30, it would be that fast. And they're going to get up, and they're going to go up to whoever's going to grade the test, and they just use a scan. You're going to get a Scantron.
I thought I saw it over in this side.
Ah, yeah, okay, this one. You're going to get a Scantron just like this. They're going to give you the pencils. You don't need to bring your own. And we're going to go over the proper use of the Scantron. When did you last use one of these? Yeah, that's why I worried about you. All right. How long ago were you apprentice?
I just went to school.
Maritime.
Maritime. Are you going through the apprenticeship program too?
No.
Okay. Because you probably use this a lot, right?
Yeah.
So he's very good at taking tests, only because he's done it a lot. And the more you do it, the better you're at it. So I'm not so much worried about him as I am about you. So we're going to talk about success on doing a multiple choice. So they're going to get it, they're going to grade it right in front of you and say whether you passed or failed. If you passed, they're going to give you a temporary certification and a number. So you want to keep that, all right? And then they'll send you a formal one later. Now, when I say later, it could be months. So don't sweat it, because you will get a renewal notice before the next year, before September 1st. So you have the temporary. So don't freak out expecting some kind of formal diploma type thing, all right, or like a driver's license. They're not that efficient up there, believe me. But you have the temporary. That number you want to keep secure, and you want to make sure the engineering office knows what that is, all right? And that's what makes you legal. Now, what is legal? An engineer that goes in, or anybody that goes in and works on a building fire pump, according to the legislation, is subject to a $10,000 a day fine. Now, would they come down and just hammer you with a $10,000 fine? No, they would warn you first. Probably verbal warning, and probably then a written warning. That's how government works, all right? Now, there was a hospital in Southern California that was cited, all right? And it was a Kaiser facility, so they learned. Some people operate on a philosophy, I'm not going to do it until they actually give me the citation. Not a good philosophy.
Kind of shoots preventive maintenance theory.
It sure does. It sure does.
So you'll know right then and there whether you pass or fail?
Yes. Now-
Even if you miss one, they won't tell you. Vicky used to say.
Oh, it's just pass
"Send
or
me an
fail?
email, I'll tell you later."
Well, you can't, you have to get a 70% passing, 70%,
Yeah.
all right.
Can we schedule on the weekends or just weekdays?
They don't work weekends.
Oh, for the state.
But they
Okay,
sleep.
so just weekdays, okay.
That's the pain about Sacramento now.
You could- So we couldn't all do it at the same time?
You
We'd-
could,
I mean,
but
but
then you'd
we
all
know
have
nobody
to
nobody
vacate here.
Tour bus.
I don't think
Okay.
that's gonna work.
No.
Party bus.
All right, so Monday
Yeah.
to Friday.
It is a major pain,
Yeah.
major pain.
Sounds like it.
And I probably should contact the guy that started it up, who I was really good friends with. He lives in the same neighborhood as my son, James Parsinjian. Now, when they were first starting this up, they were falling over themselves to try and help and do whatever they could. Now they got it running, they're bringing in money, and I think they've gotten kind of comfortable. And they're not as customer friendly as they used to be. And there's a new deputy chief in charge who's used to be an inspector. He sees things, everything black and white, and he's also former military, and it's kind of like, I have to do what I'm told, and you have to do what you're told, kind of guy. So anyway, it's not a very. I anticipate the enrollment is going to go down. Because in reality, if all 6 of you take the test, that's great, but the law doesn't mandate it. It only mandates that there be one and maybe a backup person that can cover that backup on vacations and sick days and things like that. The fact that you're doing it as a group, that's fine. But the law doesn't specify that. USF, they had 22 engineers take the test. They just wanted to do that as a condition of employment.
Did the same with the underground storage tank test. It made it so difficult that most people failed. Now facilities have one for the entire organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a great, now the test, don't be afraid of the test, all right? I'm gonna give you the material that I think if you just follow some pointers that I'm gonna give you, you shouldn't have a problem, okay?
We start the practice test on it.
Let me talk about that later, and well, the quick answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to page 11. Now this is more for the chief engineer and assistant, but you should be familiar with it because it does apply to all of you. This is the limited L license application. So this will be filled out by property management here. The fee that they're going to be sending the State Farm Marshal's office is $335. If Chinese Hospital Corporation has another building here in San Francisco that has a fire pump, that additional building they would charge $100. So it's by fire jurisdiction. If Chinese Hospital Corporation, is that what it is?
Yeah, association.
If they own a building in South San Francisco, that's a different fire jurisdiction, so that would be a new license, all right? So, I don't know, you said you have another building with a fire pump?
Yeah.
So you'd
Look
be,
at that, because it's under a health plan. I wonder if they're two separate.
yeah,
So we have to look at that.
so that's something to figure out administratively, because you save yourself some money. And that becomes an annual thing too. All right. Now, all this is really up to them, and we'll go to page 13, but either the chief or assistant chief just needs to make sure they check certain boxes. So at the top of page 13 here, item 6, see it? There's 4 boxes. You want to make sure the bottom box is checked, weekly fire pump testing. Now, if any of you had been sprinkler pipe fitters in your past and was trained and certified, you could check some of these other boxes, like annual testing and maintenance of standpipe. But most Local 39 engineers don't have that background, so they don't qualify. That would be a C16 contractor, all right? Now down below, weekly fire pump testing only. Number 7, testing and maintenance procedure. Well, you already know you need to have this on site. The other thing you're supposed to have on site is when you got your new fire pump, if you have them already, and if you don't, you want to make sure you get 2 manuals from the pump manufacturer. That is part of the law, that you're supposed to get 2 manuals. That has to do with maintenance, warranty, has to do with ordering parts, all of that type of stuff, typical of getting a mechanical device. So you want to make sure you get that. South San Francisco, brand new high-rise, and I knew the fire protection engineer that was in charge of designing it and everything, they didn't get them. And they didn't realize they were supposed to get them. So you should have that, because the state wants to see that. Okay? Now, in addition to that, the state knows, and as you know, you could have a fire pump built by Peerless, and they make all kinds of fire pumps. You could have 10 built the same day. They're not all going to operate the same. Some's going to run a little hot, some's going to take a little bit more RPMs to get up to full pressure. So what they want is an in-house created procedures on inspecting your electric fire pump. Now, that doesn't need to happen right away because you're just getting into it. You're just having a brand new pump. But the point of that is, let's say your name is James. James is the go-to person who's going to be doing the electric on a regular PM basis. But you want to go to Maui. Do you ever do that?
Hopefully sometime.
Hopefully sometime.
He's a Vegas guy.
All right, so you go to Vegas. They just blew up one of the big high-rises there to demolish it. I saw that on the TV this morning, Monterey or something. Yeah. Anyway, you won't find it there anymore. So you go to Vegas, and David's going to fill in for you. You just go to the file cabinet, you've taken the test, you're certified, you have the background, you're an engineer, and you just look up the procedures that James prepared and say, oh, this is what tools I need, this is how I go in, this is how I start the fire pump, blah, blah, blah. It's all, yeah, no problem. Okay? Because unfortunately, this doesn't give you specific steps for your specific fire pump. It's general. And the pump manufacturer's book is probably going to apply to several different pump series. It's like I installed a Generac home generator, backup generator. Well, the owner's manual, it applies to 4 different generators. So I have to make sure I look at it from the specific one I'm operating or maintaining every year. Okay, does that make sense? So they want to see that as well. Something written in-house specific to your fire pump. Now, with a new pump, it's not as difficult, but when you go down to the, for instance, the Civic Center Opera House, theirs is like 50 years old. That's when it becomes really important. Obviously, your individual fire pump test certificate, when you get that. Now, I used to say, make copies, keep the original at home, leave the copy here at work, but I've been told by San Francisco Bureau of Fire Prevention, they want to see the original. Just like if you get a high-rise fire safety director certificate, they want to see the original, not a copy. So keep that in mind, all right? But I always recommend keep your own, all your certs at home in some kind of old briefcase in case you ever need to produce it.
How do they feel if James is certified that most of the testing? Sure, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
So
And
see,
then he's on vacation. Dave runs it, but Dave doesn't have a certificate. 'cause
he's
it's
got to
not-
have a certificate.
Okay.
You gotta be legal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's why you need some backup, definitely. All right. Because once again, whoever does that inspections has to sign it. All right. And, you know, the world of liability, you know, it's like Lower Lake. Those people didn't expect it to burn that fast. It burned 1,000 homes overnight. Who would have expected it? So you don't want to have a problem happen, you know, Murphy's Law situation, where you just inspected and then the fire pump doesn't operate properly and there's damage here and there's an, you know, investigation and they find out that you weren't certified.
And the insurance company says, nope.
That becomes a big deal. You know, I always found in my experience as an officer, big problems were always once small, insignificant, and they get big. So, why mess? There's too many other unintended consequences that are going to happen anyway, right? Assorted tools. Well, what does it take for an electric fire pump? Packing gland, a wrench to loosen or tighten it. You don't need a whole lot of tools with an electric fire pump. To check the RPMs, you have the sensor gun that does that, right? What's that called? I forget now. Just
We have all that on the controller.
you just want to have that available in the engineering office.
We have one of those.
Or use infrared on the shaft.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. So have a fire pump with these things in it, the forms and all that, so that when the local San Francisco inspector comes in or the state fire inspector comes in, you have it all right there. Boom, it's done. And I don't know about you, but I'm now starting to scan things and keep everything electronically as well.
Is that part of the check? Like you have to verify it with that light, or you could just use a
An infrared gun,
whatever's
tech
built in.
gun. Use a tech gun on the
But I mean for RPM.
You follow the procedures as outlined by the manufacturer. Now some,
Oh, okay.
you know, they want to check the heat also, and some old engineers, they just use their fingers to note the heat. And since they're in there, they're the go-to person, they know whether it's running hot or whether it's taking too long to get up to its
Right.
optimum temperature. You know, so it's whatever works. Like Peerless fire pumps though, I wouldn't want to be putting my fingers around operating devices. Some of the other fire pumps, they put a little cage over the drive shaft to keep your fingers from getting in there. So some old engineers, you know, they're like this. So, copy of NFPA. Now you can cross out, because they haven't changed this in their own paperwork, cross out 2006 and write in 2013. Okay? Now the other thing that's missing here, they hate me when I point this out to them, is a copy of the laws. That's supposed to be on site also. Do you have to study it? Previously I used to say no. Now I say maybe. And I'll explain why in a little later. But a copy is supposed to also be on site in the engineering office in a file. Okay? Now that's off the fire marshal's website. You just go to the website, OSFM, Structural Fire Engineering, go to the water-based fire extinguishing system, and just you go down to publications and you just hit print and 80 pages prints out. Okay? Any questions so far? Now, the last page is what's important to you guys. Number 8, list of employees, weekly fire pump. When you take the test, the application that the Chinese Hospital Association is going to send up to Sacramento needs to list the employees that have a certification and their number. So that's when everything comes together. Okay? Now, if you have another site, is that within walking distance? That could be a benefit to you too, because you could be treated as a campus. And as a campus, they're owned by the same company. You might need to verify this with the State Fire Marshal's office, but my take on it is it's going to be treated as a campus because it's walking distance, owned by the same owner. You'll get one L license for both buildings with fire pumps. All right? If they were separate, you couldn't walk to it, or if one of them was subject to maybe being sold, they would treat it individually. So you have a benefit there. You can save money as well. All right. Now, once your name is on this, every year you're going to get a renewal, so whoever renews it just needs to confirm that the names have stayed the same. If somebody retires or somebody moves over to, you know, the new hospital on Van Ness or whatever, then the company here needs to notify the Office of the State Fire Marshal they're no longer on this list. Okay? Now, if you're treated as a campus, you can do the inspections of both buildings. Do you guys maintain both?
Yes.
Okay, then that's a no-brainer then. So that works really well for you guys. And is that an electric pump also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. New?
Very old.
Very old. All right. A little bit more of a challenge. All right. Now, if you ever freelanced, so Dave, if you ever went over and did the fire pump inspections for some other building on a Saturday or Sunday on your day off, that's fine, except you need to be listed on their L license to make you legal. Okay, it's like ABLE or ABM have rovers engineers. They might go to 5 different buildings in a week. They would need, and they're doing the fire pump, they need to be listed on each building's L license application. Does that all make sense?
Unless it's a contractor, right? Like a.
No, this is you. A C-16 contractor is
Yeah,
somebody who
that's what I mean.
contracts out with the owner. They come under the contractor's license, the technician. The individual technician does not have a fire pump cert.
The company does.
They come under the umbrella of the C-16 contractor, okay? Which is another thing. I've been to buildings with these guys. They're not that sharp. They're not. And there's a guy with Liberty Fire Protection Systems taught at the Springfield Pipe Fitters. And he told me, he said, Tom, all my people are certified, they're good to go, but I know there's companies there that just hire guys who just go in and it's kind of like, okay, you're the light switch guy. Turn it on, turn it off. That's what you do. Do you know anything about electrical? Do you know how to wire that? No. Follow me? So some of their technicians aren't really adept at fire pumps. They would not know that there's a noise that's improper or that there's something dripping where it shouldn't be. They just don't know that stuff. So, okay.
He's dripping, tighten it up.
I know. I had a guy admit he did that. He burned up a pump because he had been a plumber, and plumbers don't like leaks.
Right.
And he came in and he saw this water dripping from the packing plant. He said, you're supposed to have a drip, 1 drip per second. Okay. Anything about the L license you're not familiar with, it's right here on page 15. Now, I always get the question, does the cert come, which comes first? It really doesn't matter, all right? More times than not, engineers get their certification before the buildings get their L license. Should it go in simultaneously? Yes, but it doesn't have to, all right? But the state will catch on sooner or later. That South San Francisco building I mentioned, if you ever go down south, it's on the right-hand side, has at night, at the top near the roof, it lights up. Great chief engineer, he got his cert right away. The building never got theirs, and the state walked in and said, show me your fire pump license. Well, they didn't have it, they knew they didn't have it. They had to get it real fast, because they were given a citation. Now, on the website, Fire Marshal's website, there's a section there which actually lists all the buildings in the state of California that have current L licenses. And if your building had one, it would be listed here. They're not,
My old building never got one, I don't think she did.
they're not in alphabetical order, so be aware.
Darn it.
Okay.
How's this, how easy is it to amend the L license? Because obviously if we're taking the test and we're submitting at the same time, we don't have a number to give them.
That's all right, you just send a letter up to them saying that I took the state test, here's my pump number, please. What you can do is, you have this already made out for the year 2016. You add somebody. I just sent up a new one saying this is a new one because we've added a name. Everything else is the same.
Right.
All you needed to do is add a name, period. And they would just probably take one out and put the other one in. Okay? Any questions, gentlemen? Okay, let's go to page 17. Let me give you a flavor. After you take the test and you pass it, sooner or later, a state fire inspector is going to come down and visit your building. And they're going to want to see some of the paperwork, and they're going to want to see your pump road. And they're going to want to have the engineer who typically does the inspection show them how they would conduct the inspection. Okay? Now, in some cases, they ask the chief engineer to do that. And remember, these are fire guys, so they use a chain of command. And the assumption is all the engineers should know because the chief engineer is responsible for all training and skill, correct? He's got the responsibility if any one of you screw up, correct? I mean, that's the way it was in the fire service too. If one of my firefighters on my engine or truck screwed up, the chief didn't chew them out, he came in and chewed me out. Because what am I doing with their training program? What am I doing in terms of the verification that they can do, perform these skills? That's the way it should work, all right? So, it's really up to the state inspector. Now, I've been told many, many times they're not there to be mean, to trip you up, to screw you up, or play with you. They're not doing that. They're pretty straightforward, friendly guys, respectful, courteous, all that. They're just there to make sure you have your paperwork in order and you have a basic understanding on operating a fire pump. That's what they're there for. All right. So let me kind of run through it. And they've all taken the class, by the way. I'm the inspector. I show up. Initially, they were going to set a date that they show up. They don't do that now. They just send an inspector down with a list of addresses. Do as many as you can. Because, once again, they know traffic, they know parking, they know in some buildings they may spend 30 minutes, in another building it's 15 minutes. In another building it might be 45 minutes. It's really, how do they set a schedule? Because they don't live here, they live up in Sacramento. That's the way it works. So they might just show up. Show their badge, they're in uniform, I'm here to do the fire pump and, run through. Now, by inspection, do they have you run the fire pump? No, they don't. They have you verbalize it. So, once again, they show up, very first thing, I want to go to the engineering office, I want you to show me the textbook, I want you to show me the laws, I want you to show me the various forms that you're used to inspect the electric fire pump. Show me, let's say, last September's inspection form, all right? Now, you're supposed to use their forms. If you're using in-house forms, that, don't tear them up and shred them, the old ones that you've used, just keep them in your file for history, but start using the new forms, which is their forms, all right? Which are pretty good, by the way, all right? So, once that's done, oh, and they check your certification, that you have that on site. And then they go down to the pump room. Now, they're not going to drag it out of you. You have to tell them. So if you're the type that, I'm John Wayne, I only talk if I need to, you're not going to do well. So you have to, like you're up on a stage saying, all right, I've already notified security to put the fire alarm system offline. Why? Because if the fire pump starts up, it's going to send an alarm, correct? And the fire trucks are going to roll, and we don't want that. So the very first thing, we put the fire alarm system offline when we run the fire pump. Make sense? Mm-hmm. We go into the pump room, and there's a sign that says pump room on the door, so there's that. And when I go in, I just stand there, and I tell the inspector, I'm just going to look around to make sure things are in order. There's not the security guard's bicycle. There's not the custodian's mop bucket. There's not the
Cardboard boxes.
boxes of fluorescent light tubes. None of that's supposed to be in it. It's supposed to be a pump room, not a storage room. So that's number one. Number two, I look for any leaks. Pump rooms are supposed to be dry. If there's a leak, there's a problem. So I look for that. I listen for any unusual noises. Well, the noise is not going to come from the fire pump, it's going to come from the jockey pump, correct? And that may not be running all the time, it really shouldn't have to. But if it does run, you hear it, you hear that nice hum sound, rather than, you know, the cat that's having its tail pulled. Because I've heard that too. There's a building in San Francisco, the Fox Plaza. I was actually called in as a lieutenant to investigate. They had a fire there, and a 6-inch main, wet standpipe main, ruptured during the fire. And they wanted to find out what caused this, because the building was trying to blame the fire department and pay the damages to several properties that were flooded. There was Pacific Stereo on the ground floor that was shut down, flooded.
It's Patrick and Company.
Goes back a long time ago, back into the early 80s. Well, I first thought it was a fire department error, that the fire department pump operator called us a water hammer. And then when I investigated further, and that's why NFPA 20 became real handy, there's supposed to be a percentage of PSI between when the jockey pump starts up and when it sends a message to the fire pump to start up. If there's a major discrepancy of PSI, a jockey pump, it'd be like you're in your 2016 Corvette and you drop the Corvette right into, from 50 miles an hour into first gear. What's going to happen? It's going to blow up your drivetrain, right? Or if you ever had a clutch, you know, had a stick shift, and you try to shift up into third gear when you're still down into, you know, the 20-mile-an-hour range, and your car just kind of, then it tries to catch up to that, and you can actually get a surge, right? Well, that's can happen with fire pumps too. If there's too much pressure differential between the jockey pump and the main pump, and that is in fact what happened at the Fox Plaza. It caused a rupture right there at the fire pump, which caused the main to break.
The road side of the pump or line side?
But it was right on the discharge side, but it was within like 20 feet of the fire pump. Because it's, all of a sudden, the fire pump started up, was doing this, and then sends this massive amount of pressure that couldn't be relieved fast enough. It just ruptured it.
6-inch pipe.
So, I'm doing all that visual. And then, without having the diesel, you don't have to check the oil level, you don't have to check the day tank for diesel fuel, the level in the day tank. There's not a whole lot you have to check. There's going to be some gauges, and there's two important gauges. Paper to erase that.
Oh, I think I
So, Rich, right there behind you.
Oh, perfect. So your fire pump, you probably have a vertical fire pump actually. Is its main water supply from the street main or from a reservoir?
street main. We actually have both, but street main's primary.
Okay, so you have a tank somewhere, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, and you have a jockey pump, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's just a little electric jockey pump. So here's your pump room, and you have your piping and all that. So your jockey pump, I really value it, and eventually the state did also, because originally it wasn't in the original law. There's several ways to start your fire pump. One, which I recommend, is run water off your jockey pump. Just open up a little valve there, and it causes water to come out. Typically it's about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch at the most. That goes to a drain. And the jockey pump obviously starts up, because it senses pressure loss in your system side of your building. Now your system side is where sprinklers are and your wet standpipes are, which is probably what you have here, correct? Wet standpipes. And it can't keep up with the static pressure on your system side, and sends a message to the fire pump, start up, big guy. Simple as that. Now, NFPA 20 says there's actually 2 ways your fire pump can start, because there's also a piping that goes right from your system to your fire pump, and you could open that up and cause a loss of pressure, and your fire pump is going to sense it and start up. I recommend the jockey pump because it's now part of your inspection. So you might as well inspect it, and you want to make sure it's operating properly, and that that the sequence of the jockey pump starting and the fire pump is correct. That's how I recommend it. But get the sign off by your manufacturer on that. Okay. Now, your pump is getting a primary supply from the city, correct? But if there's more flow, or if the city main should be disrupted for whatever reason, you have a check valve that's going to allow water from your tank to supply the fire pump. So that's a good backup. And with a hospital, that makes perfect sense to have that, because you don't have people that can automatically get up out of bed and leave the hospital, correct? So you have a backup supply that's designed for not necessarily the worst case scenario, but designed for the reasonable amount of fire flow that would be expected from your sprinklers and your wet standpipe. Does that make sense? Now, your fire pump, oftentimes when you go to the pump manufacturer, you look at one fire pump, you look at the other, and you kind of, hey, they all look the same. They basically are, visually, but they operate differently because they're designed based on the fire flow needed here. And what is that factor? Well, it's a factor of the square footage and the height of your building. The number of sprinkler heads, the number of standpipe outlets. So that all goes into the design criteria for your fire pump. And then the other important part is, what is the pressure from the city?
About 90.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good, huh?
So PSI,
Yeah, 88 to 92.
okay? So you have a gauge here on your fire pump that says what your incoming pressure is. And undoubtedly that's a compound gauge. Compound meaning it's a gauge that reads down to 30 degrees mercury. I'm writing this wrong. So this is 0. This is 0 psi. And then it starts going up in increments. And based on your building, maybe it goes up to 200 or 300 psi gauge. And it goes down to 30 degrees below 0. Now, this direction is bad, correct? Because it means your pump is going to possibly cavitate. And cavitation, I've actually heard it. If you haven't heard it, it sounds horrible, horrible. It sounds like rocks or marbles inside your fire pump. And it's really water that's under a vacuum is boiling and condensing to steam, and that steam is actually exploding inside your fire pump because of the high heat and vacuum, and it's actually going to damage your impellers, which are typically made of brass, which is pretty soft metal when you apply heat to it, and it just blows apart parts of your impellers and things. Not good. So everybody, like your chief engineer, knew what the suction pressure is. And that is, in my mind, the most important gauge in the pump room, is that suction gauge. You want to make sure you have that pressure coming in from the street, because during a fire, you're going to see that going down. Because there's several things. There's static pressure, which is what this would be, this 90. And then there's flowing pressure. Now, just by running your fire pump weekly or monthly, you're not really going to know what flowing is, because you're not really running water. You want to try and do that during the 1 year and the 5 year, where they actually flow water to see how does that impact.
Yours is about 64.
Yeah.
We calculated that.
Yeah, you want to know the low end as best you can, as best you can. Because even during your 5 year, they're not going to flow a ton of water like maybe a worst case fire would. But you kind of want to know what is your cushion there, right? And then the final part is residual. Residual pressure. That is, okay, if it drops from 90 to 60, I have some, this is what I consider my residual pressure. And there's a formula that I try to tell fire chief officers, you need to know what that is. Because if you tell your firefighters to go put more hose lines to work, can they actually get flow off the residual pressure? They may not be able to do that. Their hoses are going to collapse. And that's when mains, your standpipes, can you imagine that cast iron or steel main collapsing because of vacuum? If it's cast iron, they can actually collapse because it's like a straw. You put a straw into a cup, yeah, you're getting flow, but then you put your finger over the bottom of the straw and keep sucking, what happens to the straw? Collapses. All right. So you can do damage. So I'm going to tell the inspector, okay, I've checked all the gauges, I've noted that, I've checked the pump room, no leaks, there's no odd noises, mechanical ventilation is taking place because you probably have it in an interior off room, right? So you need that mechanical ventilation, that's working fine. Now I'm going to start the fire pump, if that's okay with you, Mr. Inspector. He's going to say, well, don't start it, just verbalize it. All right, well, I go over, I release some water, causing the jockey pump to start up, and I keep that water flowing, that goes to a drain, and it sends a message over to the fire pump to start up, and I time that. I time that from the time that the pump starts till it gets up to its maximum discharge pressure. And every building has its own separate maximum discharge pressure that the pump comes up to. Now with stationary fire pumps, there's no accelerator. There's no gas pedal. Mobile fire pumps, the operator can actually advance, make the impellers run faster. You can't do that. And that's a good thing, all right? Because you don't, it's designed for this maximum flow, all right? So it comes up to that, you just check that pressure. Now, why is the weekly or monthly important? Well, everything is measured from the original acceptance test. When they come in and accept it, everybody signs off on it, they put a data plate on the fire pump with all the measurements of what that pump is supposed to operate to. So let's say we have that 2016 Corvette again. 10 years go by now. Is it going to operate as efficiently as it did when it was brand new? Probably not. Now you really don't run your fire pumps that much, so it's not like your Corvette. So it's probably going to maintain within a certain percentage from the original. But the point is, should it not come up to that, then there's something wrong. Now, we don't expect you to dismantle the pump, we just expect you to know that there's something wrong in terms of it coming up to its optimum level, and to note that. And that means possibly a phone call to your fire protection engineer, whoever that is, who comes in now and is going to troubleshoot and figure out what's wrong. Now, you might find that it's the city main is a problem. They're always working around here, right? Tearing up streets and the mains and all kinds of stuff. The other part is mains flow more than just water. They flow silt, sand, and rocks. We were doing a fire pump test at 19th and Folsom, and on the suction inlet of all fire pumps there's a screen. And we noticed a perceptible drop in the fire pump pressure. What's causing that? So we stopped the operation and we took the valve off, and we saw a great big washer, about this big, in the screen of the fire pump that had flowed through the hydrant and came out. That hydrant from somewhere, miles away, just flowed with the water, came out and plugged up that fire pump suction screen. So water systems do flow other stuff other than just water. You know, they used to open up the hydrants in the city and flush them. Mm-hmm. They don't hardly do it at all anymore. Partly because of staffing, and mostly due to citizens' complaint for wasting water. But there were streets, hydrants down in the South of Market area where we opened up, and literally mud came out. Mud for like 30 seconds because silt seeps in. So, you ever take the little tip off your faucet at home and see that stuff that comes out? Have you done that, James? Yeah. And that's just in your house. So, okay, any questions about this? All right. Now, any questions on, there's some answers on page 18, but let's get into electric fire pump on page 19. Now, you have extra forms of this in your handouts, of this inspection form, plus you know how to get to the fire marshal's website to download if you need it in the future. My preference or advice would be, this part is always going to be the same. Filled out once, nice and neat, and then just make copies of that. And half your work is done. Because the pump manufacturer is going to stay the same, pump models are going to stay the same. So all this is pretty much the same. Okay? Now, down below, up here you see I for inspection, across this top blue line, T for test, M for maintenance, and P for pass, F fail, NA not applicable. So when you look down, most of what you're doing is I, inspection, and inspection is visual. Item 1.1, fire pump start pressure. Well, it's just what the pressure was when you started up the pump. Item 1.2, fire pump stop pressure. What was it when the pump was at its maximum pressure and then you stopped it? Okay. Now, if you have any doubts of what that means, to the right of it you see 8.3.2. That matches the reference in your textbook. Now, all of you, I'm going to have you look up something. See item pump house, item 1.5? And to the right of it, we see 8.221. Well, inside your handout, I gave you all the pages from this textbook. I downloaded them and put it in here, this handout. Now, if you call NFPA, I'm going to say, I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, Murray, who's that?
So we're going to look it up right now, 8.22. 8.22, which is on
36.
page 29, my page. Page, and see up here, it says page 2533 of the textbook, but my printed that I gave you down the bottom is page 23. And on the left-hand side, see the dark area where it says 8.22? You see it there, Rich? So heat is adequate, not less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius in parentheses, for pump room with diesel pumps without engine heaters. Now, can I promise that's a test question? No, I can't, but I would remember that. Because isn't that an easy question for multiple choice? Heat is adequate, not less than 20 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Very easy to put in the form of a question.
We actually used Fahrenheit on in my last test.
Yeah.
We used to use always just Celsius, always.
Correct.
That was, I think, the first year we got Fahrenheit, but double plus 32. Yeah, I did it.
Well, they weren't following the first test, their own textbook, because the first test, Celsius was supposed to be the answer.
Yeah.
That's per the code. But they used Fahrenheit because they said, who in the United States uses Celsius? So they used Fahrenheit, which screwed up a lot of engineers.
I got it. You taught me well.
Now this time around, they corrected that. In the textbook, they say they use Fahrenheit first. And that's why Celsius is in a parenthesis. Okay? So Fahrenheit 40 is the correct answer. Okay? So you see how you can look it up if you have any questions about this, the inspection form. Now, study-wise, I first recommend you read it. Now, do you need to buy all these books? That's up to you. You need to buy at least two, one for each building. But do you need to buy them for each individual engineer? Being the cheap guy I am, I'd say no. Because all the pages that have to do with fire pump, I've included into this handout, right in here. Okay? The second thing, if you have any doubts, and I know printing, what they did, why this is 80 pages versus the old law, which is 40, they literally, everything that's in here that has to do with fire pumps, they copied into the law. It's all right in here. Okay? So between the two of these, you have your study material. All right? Now, in addition, I went through the law because I didn't want you to read 80 pages. And I took out of it what I thought was important out of the law. Okay? Now, they threw off a bunch of my engineers that showed up and took the test. Most got through it okay. We still had about 82% passing rate. Even though they threw us a curve, they added section H to the test. But some engineers got screwed up and bitched and moaned. That's what a BMW is, right? Bitch, moan, and what's the other one? So here's copies from Annex H that, as best as I could, based on feedback from engineers who've taken the test, this is some of the source material for questions. Okay? Now, in studying, gentlemen, unfortunately, you have to study diesel as well as electric, because the state test is on both, electric and diesel. Now, one, being engineers, you have heads up over your non-union brothers and sisters, because you're better trained, more experienced. That's been my observations. With a group like this, you're all going to be reading the same material, and you can help each other. Every now and then get together and have a little study session, or just during the day shoot questions at each other. Get into the pump room, hopefully get McClanahan or whoever's going to come down and run you through it. I would demand that. That's what they owe you.
Yep.
That's what they owe you. Make sure you ask questions. If you videotape me, videotape them, all right? They might say, that's pretty intimidating. Well, hide it, hide the camera. But anyway, legally I think you have to tell them, but that's up to you guys. But get into the pump room, just run dry runs. Okay, the test is really not that you have to put 8 hours into it. All right. But what I find with engineers is study skills have deteriorated. So study skills being, I'm going to read the material and I'm going to highlight what I don't know. Too often students highlight what they know. What year did Columbus discover America?
No.
42.
1492. Most of us remember that. And it's like a gazillion years ago where I took that class, right? But there's some things we just don't forget. So don't highlight with yellow what you already know. That's a waste of time. Because the second time you read it, you're only going to read the highlights. Follow me? Now, I made a mistake and I highlighted a bunch of stuff for you. So you may want to recopy this so you don't see the yellow, and you just highlight what you it's not coming to you, all right? So the second time I read it, I only read the yellow, and I have a green marker with me now. Now, most of this is going to come back to you. But if something doesn't, highlight it with green. Because that's something that you're going to have to kind of work on, to just kind of, it's a stumbling block. We all have it, all right? So my expectation is, if you can get a test date, that gives you a benchmark as to when your time frame for preparation. I would want to prepare about a month before the test date, not a week before. That's not enough time to remember some code issues, all right? And the brain actually, when you get closer to the test, more anxiety comes up. And when you have more anxiety, you don't remember as well. It's a proven fact, all right? So you want to kind of ease into this comfortably. And help each other, of course, but review it at least 3 times. 3 times. One time I read everything. The second time I read the yellow. The third time I read just the green. And then a week before the test, I read the yellow and green. Does that make sense? Is that how you kind of studied, or you look like you got A's? Does he look like an A guy?
No.
Uh-oh. Maritime got a leaky ship here. Okay. James outed you. Okay. So that would be my strategy. Okay. And read both electric and diesel. I've given you some hints here where I think they kind of focus some attention to. You have Annex H and the laws. A couple of other things here. On page 41. Now they've upped the questions from 30 to 50. The 20 questions that they've added to it apparently is almost all administrative type questions that has to do with the law. Makes no sense to me, but once again, the deputy chief who's in charge of the program now is more of a law guy than actually a mechanic guy. I think it's a wrong direction, but I don't have the power to change that. So study skills. Remember, you're going to get a Scantron. You're going to get 50 questions. Make sure you answer every question. Even if you have to take a wild-ass guess, answer a question. Because if you don't, it goes against you. A blank. If you get to a question and you just have it a block, move past it. Don't just sit there because anxiety and all that other stuff hits in. You'll have 45 minutes to an hour to finish the test. That's plenty of time. If I skip one, with my pencil, I put a little mark to the left of the number, so that before I get up to turn it in, I look at my test and make sure there's no pencil marks, because that's an indicator I didn't answer that one. All right? You know that trick, right?
And you skip it, and the next question you put in that spot,
I
and
know.
you've got 20 wrong, and you're like,
Yeah, yeah, you have to keep in
Damn
order.
it.
You have to definitely keep in
Yeah.
order. All right. Now, sometimes answer or questions later will kind of give you a little bit of information that will help you on the one you skipped. Did you ever find that?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of what you took at the Maritime was all mechanical, correct? Electrical and everything else, steam and piping. I learned, because I took plenty of tests for lieutenant, captain, chief officer, and all that type of stuff, that I never studied the night before. It was just too, I just relaxed. Went to bed early, got up, and part of my trick, and I added it to my son's, stop and get a coffee with a double espresso. Because one of the things is brain fatigue that hits in while you start taking a test. And if you haven't taken tests in the past, you do get brain fatigue and you get tired mentally. So you don't want that to happen. So do you take coffee? You would probably already take 3 shots, right?
When I took my apprenticeship test, I had like,
Yeah.
I had like a triple shot. So.
Triple shot. Did it work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know where I'm coming from, right? So you want to, but don't take too many that you're shaking as you go in. I used to take, when I was in college, Dramamine. Not Dramamine, those little pills that were like,
Like the no-dose or something?
no-dose, that's what it was.
Yeah,
No, and I'd get to the point, my hands were shaking, I couldn't stop them. So don't go there. When you get the test handed out to you, just quickly glance down all the questions and make sure they're not marked with a pen or a pencil. That somebody might have done it before you. Because when you take it up, Vicky would check every single page. And if there's a mark, you fail. All right? So right off the bat, check it. If you see anything screwed up with your test, raise your hand and say, I want you to inspect this, please. I think there might be a problem. And get a fresh one. But bring it to their attention. All right? Now, I had to complain once because Vicky used the F word to one of my engineers. And I complained to her boss. And she knows it. And I just said it's not professional. And it's because some of the tests were so old, you could hardly read it. I said, Vicky, come on. You can't blame him for saying you got a bad test. And she said, sit down, sit the F down. And
I told you she's tough, man. So, yes ma'am, yes ma'am.
anyway, so she was better. I had to say, Vicky, no hug today? She laughs. But they've had a change up there. I used to bring them coffee. She liked blueberry muffins. Last time I did it, she wouldn't touch it. And none of the others would touch it. And I think they've got the right at read to them. Be careful because of that they think I'm trying to influence them. Come on. Relax. But, so take a look at this, and when you read, because we're going to go to a sample test in just a moment, when you read the question, put your hand over the choices, all right? Because unfortunately, our eyes will go right down to the 4 choices before we finish reading the question. And we're going to assume we know the right answer. Okay, don't do that. That'll sabotage yourself. So put your hand over the 4 choices. You're going to get 4 choices. And read the full question. Look for what I call the trigger word, the word that's really what they're asking. All right? Because they could have a question and there's actually 2 statements in the same question. So make sure you're reading the question and getting out of it what you think it's supposed to be. All right? So read this once, preferably at home with a glass of wine or a beer. All right? And then what I want you to do, how do you all feel? You need to step up and walk out for a minute?
For a bit, yeah.
All right, why don't we do this? You go get up, use the restroom if you need it, and then just is it right here, the fire pump?
Yes.
Let's make a quick visit to the fire pump room, then come back and I want you to do this little test. Okay? Is that all right?
Yes.
David, how can we book your renewal?
I haven't renewed, I'm good.
Oh, you're good?
Oh, you're talking fast. Yeah.
Have you keep it up every year with it, or you just left?
Oh, yeah, I want to take that test again. It's great.
Also, this is just a refresher that's
Exactly, I'm here supporting my guys, see Mr. Murray again.
All right, good to see you.
Yes, thank you guys.
You know, there was a question on one of those.
Make sure you keep my FSD, because I don't want to take that course again either. Renew that every 5 years.
Well, right now, it's right down the street.
Mhm.
I give a 3-hour, it costs $98. I know local 39 charges, what, 15 hours something? But it's right down the street.
If you miss that five-year window, oh,
Your nail, your
man.
nail is in here.
Damn it.
Your nail. Did that happen to you?
It did, and I retook it in 15.
Well, because at City College, it's a real pain because you have to file a petition to take that over. Because in my mind, the law doesn't say you can do less than what the state says, but it doesn't say you can't do more. Follow me? And I've been recommending, based on 2014. Now, when I confront the State Farm Marshal's office about that, they just kind of shrug their shoulders. And the reason is legislation. To change one sentence or paragraph in state legislation means going back through the assembly and getting all the state senators and all the state assembly people to re-vote this change, which you'd think should be just administrative level, but it's not.
Sometimes it opens it up for a lot of other changes as well, right?
Yeah. So it's more than just a sentence change. So there's the mind-boggling part of government. Government's not at the cutting edge of technology, unfortunately, but that is what it is. Now, do you currently use the state forms?
Simplex does, I've seen it.
Simplex does. They're the ones handling the fire pump at the other facility, Grant.
Okay.
That thing has had a bunch of repairs. It was in bad shape when I got
Now,
here.
make sure they're giving you copies. They should give you copies.
Yeah, I got all the copies in the folder.
Some buildings don't get copies.
And they are state forms.
All right, so there are state
Actually, they
forms.
forget to send me other buildings forms. And I have to call and say, thank you, but this is not us.
I actually got some emailed to me. And I think I don't do this. No, you're sending it to the wrong person here. So, anyway, okay. If you have a company come in and show you the operation, if I could be a fly on the wall, I'd love that. I'd like to just come in and join. I won't ask questions and other issues. I just kind of like to hear what they have to say because every building is a little bit different, and I hear different things from different. There's a head inspector at North Bay Fire Department that covers Daly City, Pacifica, and some other areas in San Mateo County, and he was oblivious to all this. He's been an inspector for 12 years. He didn't know anything about the fire pump certification or anything. So there's a lot of ignorance out there. But believe me, I really think you're learning this, the hands-on part. When they come, you're probably going to think, boy, I got nervous over nothing. So, okay. You just want to read that material. We're going to go back in now and kind of refocus on the potential questions you could have. Okay? So, don't even use it. Do you have hose cabinets?
In the 79 building, we do the whole building.
When it's re-sprinklered, you can get permission from the fire department to take them out. All right. Now, go to page 43. And remember, we're focusing on the test. Now, you shouldn't get question 1 wrong, but the focus of this is to read the question and pick one of the 4. Now, Seth, I don't know whether they taught you test taking at the academy or not. So let me ask you, were you looking for the incorrect answer or the correct answer when you did multiple choice?
And a lot of times, like, you knew the answer, you would find it, but then if you didn't know it as well, you'd just eliminate the ones that were obviously wrong.
Correct. That is the preferred method of taking a multiple choice test, is not to look at the A, B, C, D and try and figure out the correct one. It's to try and figure out the 3 incorrect. All right? Now, how do you do that? Well, words that sound made up. Things that just don't jive with your reading. It sounds like, where did this come from? If your gut is telling you that, then I would discount it. All right? You should be able to easily eliminate two of the choices. So that gives you a 50% choice of getting the right answer. So you want to narrow it down. The other is make sure you read the question, all right? And there'll be some here that will really address that. So pump house heating condition. Heat is adequate, not less than. Anybody?
We know it's B.
You know it's what?
B, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, general.
And why did you know it was B?
Well, from us reading 8221 earlier, but also because it can't be freezing or less than freezing.
Right. So the point is, Rich, you did look at all the other 3, all 4, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure you look at all 4. Don't just look down and say, oh, this must be the right one. So 4, when we look at, question 1, A is wrong because it gives Celsius.
But the numbers are close. If you convert that Celsius to Fahrenheit, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it is
But
close.
remember,
Yeah.
the answer according to the code now is in Fahrenheit. So any answer that is in Celsius is incorrect. 40 degrees Fahrenheit general, 70 for pump room with diesel pumps without. Okay, that sounds good, but let's not look at all of them. So C32, that is freezing.
Freezing.
So we know that's wrong. And then we come to D, we see once again 0, we see Celsius. So the only logical choice is B. All right?
That's different than this part though.
What does it say?
Because
I
this
don't
part
think
says
it's
40 for diesel, and then this one says 70 for diesel.
For pump rooms without it, where does that say that?
Like here it says 70 for pump room with diesel pumps without engine heaters, but then here it says 40 for pump room with diesel pumps without engine heaters.
This is 40 general.
40 general. So it means it can't be lower than 40.
I think what he's saying is they don't have a reference to the 70 degree Fahrenheit.
They don't what?
It'd
I'm
be-
just saying in number 1 there's no correct answer. Because like, at least according to the thing that it references.
Well, they don't, what he's saying is that they don't, there's more information on the answer than in B1, 2, or B2,
Yeah.
1A.
I summarized. So I'm going to have to re-look at that, James, how I wrote that,
Okay.
and make it more compatible. Now, I want to warn you about something else too. When you read the code, I was trained in the San Francisco Fire Department that everything was subject to court intervention. So every question we wrote had to have a specific reference. The State Fire Marshal doesn't do that. They will take the information from the book, paraphrase it into a question, which means it's not the exact way it's written in this can show up on the test. All right, so that creates a trouble. If you're a reader that's looking for the black and white exactly how it's written in here, you may have trouble because they don't do that in the question.
Right.
And I don't like that, but there's no way I can change that. All right, so be aware of that, okay? So the point is, you have to pick out the most correct answer of the 4,
Unless it says none.
which it doesn't do.
No.
It doesn't do it. So you can't go up and say, number 1 is a bad question.
You should tell Vicki that.
He's a Maritime Academy graduate as well.
I bet he is, yeah. And they were very precise, right? But the point is, they'll just say, sit down. It's, the answer's there.
What would use the F word?
So your point is, you're correct, but you have to make sure when you read the choices, you have to pick the most correct one out of the four.
Right.
So there's part of your challenge too. So cranking voltage exceeds volts on a 12-volt system or volts on a 24 system. Now, I gave you the reference here. So unless you know it, we better just look it up. So, in your handout, you can look it up because it's 8.12.
I think I know what it is, let's see if I guessed correctly. Excuse me. 8.2.
So that's on page 28 of your handout.
Yeah, no, I would have been wrong.
You see it there? It's more than halfway down on the left-hand side,
9 and 18.
Yep, 9 and 18.
okay?
Oh, yeah. I would have thought 10 and 20?
Yeah, so I would have thought too.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and that's what you gotta be careful of. I'm gonna give you some sample questions, don't just kinda wing it, look it up. Because that exercise of just flipping over to the reference point is gonna make it stay in your mind better. What can be substituted for the normal starting procedure? A, automatic timer. B, release water from pressure relief valve to pressure below jockey pump, normal operating pressure. C, opening pump room sprinkler drain valve. Silence alarm system and pull manual building alarm.
I think I know, let's see. 3, 2, 6.
Oh,
3, 2, 6.
Now, once again, I think, James, I'm gonna have to revisit this because, well, I'm gonna let you wrestle with this a little bit.
You're looking at the word normal, is that what you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. I would have got that right.
Did you find it on page 29?
yeah.
8.3.26?
Yeah, it could confuse you if you're looking at verbatim and you see normal and you're
Yeah.
thinking, okay, well, the automatic timer is our normal procedure, right? So, but yeah, it's just looking for the best answer.
Well, because I did tell you draining some water off the jockey pump
Right.
could be a way.
Right.
Well, typically, I would never want an automatic timer because I want to be there in case
Correct.
something bad happened.
Right.
So,
Some systems have gone so automated that
I guess if something alarmed, you could
now,
have BMS.
actually,
call you.
B is different, pressure relief valve.
Mhm.
That's not the jockey pump. Pressure relief valve is a system built into your pump room that if a fire department is operating off the wet standpipe and they have a 2.5-inch hose that's flowing 180 gallons a minute and they suddenly stop the nozzle, a water hammer can come back and that automatic relief valve should release that pressure coming back before it gets to the fire pump. It relieves it off. And so that's what B is about. Opening a pump room sprinkler drain valve, well, that's not the normal procedure,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
correct?
Right.
Could that start the pump?
Yes.
Yes, it could.
Definitely will.
But I think under the category of normal, that's not the normal. Okay?
It's weird that it says that you could use the automatic timer and then right below it says qualified personnel shall be in attendance when the pump is running. kinda
Yeah.
contradicts itself, but.
Is this your first time looking at codes like this?
For like the Coast Guard test, it was like, half the test was this stuff.
Yeah, well, just be aware that code has always me scratching my head, which is why in my high-rise class, it's not a code class. And I always preference everything I say, the final decision maker is your inspector.
Right.
Because the unfortunate thing is you could get two inspectors arguing different ways, different points of view.
Right.
Just like I told you about the backflow preventer on the suction side of the pump. Yep.
It was on the system side?
Correct.
Yeah, what's that?
No, on the supply side to the pump. They were at the gate valve inside, you know, it starts
Well, let's think for a minute.
oscillating.
Let's go to this. You guys have,
It makes sense.
well,
I understand what he was getting at.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened with
Mhm.
those sump pumps that we have. Part of those, like, butterfly valves broke off, so
Mhm.
it happens.
That's city.
so in the front of the street on Jackson, you have inlets called fire department connections, correct? FDCs. Now, and then you have the street pressure. Now, if the pump is set up correctly, this water comes directly into the fire pump. This water should go to the discharge side of the system. There are buildings in San Francisco that had that wrong. They have buildings that actually have these go directly to the fire pump. Now, the reason for backflow is that the your fire pump, it can produce more pressure, and without the backflow preventers, can actually send water back out the FDC. So engine 2 could be hooked up to your fire department connections on Jackson Street, and the fire pumper is supplying it, let's say 100 pounds. And then your fire pump, when it starts up, do you know what this maximum pressure is?
I don't.
I'm gonna guess it's probably 125 or
I think
something.
it's more. Yeah.
Probably more, but 125, 150, something like that. So that means there's more pressure from the fire pump that's gonna pump water right back out these outlets, or excuse me, inlets, into the fire pump that's taking a supply from a hydrant down the street, and literally that water is gonna go back into the potable water system. So that's why there's backflow preventers, to prevent that from happening. Because it has happened in San Francisco.
Okay.
And the state of California Health Department, because people started getting diarrhea. Because you know the initial water that, well, from your reservoir or from your sprinkler system, that's yucky water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's pumped back out into a hydrant, which is potable water, if you open up a hydrant on the street, that's the same water that comes out of your faucets.
Mhm.
It's potable. But once it comes out for firefighting, it's treated as non-potable.
Yeah,
But
I'm really
back
concerned
to-
about putting like a ball valve instead of the gate valve, so the butterfly doesn't do this and over time break and get thrown into the pond.
Well, I was surprised too, because we went away from butterfly valves.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, first of all, under pressure, they can be hard to close.
Very.
And that's the big thing. But also, we went to screw type valves. That was mandated on all fire rigs. So, well, let's get back to this.
Yes, sir.
So, 4, as observed during the weekly inspection, wet pit suction screens should be, and I kind of gave you the answer inside, but there's a code answer. So we're looking for the best, James. A, painted to resist corrosion. Now think about it for a minute. Where is the wet pit suction screen?
Sorry, inlet underwater, right?
It's underwater. So you have a tank that's probably 10,000 or more gallons, and at the very bottom, there's a suction inlet that takes water from the very bottom of the tank to supply water to your fire pump, and they're saying there should be a screen there. So how are you going to paint it if it's underwater? You can't. So can we throw that one out? B, no more than a 1/4 inch screen. Can your apprentice hold his breath to get down underneath to check the screen?
If he wants to continue his apprenticeship,
He'll get scuba certified.
With an underwater, so can we throw that out?
but
Yes.
utility can.
C, unobstructed and in place. All right, well let's look at D. Made of zinc to prevent electrolysis due to water turbulence.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Oh, bro, yeah.
That's just ridiculous wording right there.
You're correct. Now, what's interesting, in mobile fire pumps, the screen going into the suction, to a mobile fire pump, it has to be zinc coated. Because remember, mobile fire pumps are moving across the streets, and static electricity builds up in the tires that can transform with the movement of the water electrolysis. And it can actually cause an eating away of your bronze and pillars. So they do have a zinc coated.
But that's to save the pump, right? Not
Correct.
the screen.
That's the screen actually deteriorates over
Right.
years. It's
Sacrificial.
designed to actually.
It's sacrificial.
It's a sacrificial. Now, in even your stationary pump, there's a bolt typically at the base of the pump, and the purpose of that bolt is that was to put a zinc anoid into your pump if you wanted to. Most buildings don't, but your anoid would be a couple inches long. It would have to be replaced every couple of years.
Mhm.
You're familiar with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely.
So, but
With
stationary,
saltwater, it's like way worse.
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So, according to the code, the most correct answer is C here. Unobstructed and in place. Because they didn't give you a choice, not an A, did they?
Right.
Now you know on your form where it asks about that, you're going to put an NA. Now let's look at number 5. The purpose of testing the pump assembly is to blank operation upon demand and continuous delivery of the required system output. Okay, A, ensure automatic or manual. Any thumbs up or thumbs down?
Could be.
Good, could be.
Right?
Could be. Okay, B, meets NFPA standards.
Sure.
Well, think about it for a moment. Couldn't that be the answer for all 50 questions? Meets NFPA standards. So that's not a practical choice. C, ensure full. Does that fit in nice and cozy with that blank space? Assembly is to ensure full operation upon demand. And D, fulfill the AHJ requirement. Now, what does AHJ stand for?
Authority having jurisdiction.
Correct.
What
Now,
was that?
Authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
in this code, AHJ could be the owner of the building, could be the local fire department, could be the state fire marshals, could be the insurance company. They changed that. Now, in this book, it's either the state fire marshal or the local fire department, your AHJ, authority having jurisdiction. All right, so there's the change, AHJ. Now, purpose of testing the pump assembly is to fulfill the AHJ requirements. Well, I don't know, I gotta pick the best out of the 4. Ensure full sounds grammatically correct, but let me ask you a question, gentlemen. When I read this sentence, does it say anything about weekly pump inspection? No. Now bear in mind, 2 of the chapters you have to read are Annex A and B and H. Now, those are all auxiliary information, means general. So your pump is supposed to have a continuous supply of water, correct? Or wait, the purpose of testing it, operation upon demand, correct? You have a sprinkler flow. You find out your fire pump is not started, what can you do?
Turn it on.
Just hit the manual start.
Yeah.
So that's what that's all about. If the pump doesn't start automatically, your pump can be started manually.
So, you know,
So
what
A
kind
would
of
be
throws
the-
me, but the purpose of testing, it doesn't say what testing, all testing, 5-year,
Correct.
1-year, weekly,
Correct.
monthly.
Right.
Because typically, we don't test manual, we test automatic, we drop some
Correct.
water,
Right,
right, and have it start automatically.
right.
So if you're thinking small, like just weekly testing, you might dismiss the manual part, because you never just hit the button.
Well, if I was chief engineer here, because you're supposed to test the manual, I think, either quarterly or once a year. Test the manual. But what I would do, I would run through the regular startup and all the stuff for the jockey pump and the fire pump, and then get everything back down and operating. And before I opened up the discharge side of the fire pump, I would start it manually, just to see if it works. And I would just check that off. Because I want to make sure if it doesn't start automatically, that I can in fact start it manually. And I want to do it at a more frequent PM than what the code actually specifies. That's my take on that. Now, I want to make sure, because I think a couple of you are outside the room. When you go into the pump room to start your test, you take the visual, you take readings of the gauges, you check the water level in the reservoir, you do all those type of things, and then before you start the fire pump, you shut the discharge side of the fire pump off. And you can call it deadheading, or you can call it churn, C-H-U-R-M. That means deadheading, literally. And that's how they design your pump back in the manufacturer. They actually set up the design and the operation of your pump in churn mode, meaning deadheading. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that's clear. Now, I have something else for you.
So just to clarify, A was the correct answer.
A is the correct answer for that question.
Yeah.
Now, what I prepared for you here is 29 questions, multiple choice. All come from the reference material. Now, what I really recommend, don't do this right away. Do the reading, get in the pump room, get the manufacturer over here or McClanahan, and actually go through the, did everybody get one?
Mm-hmm.
Go through the operation of the weekly / monthly, however you're going to do it. You realize up on the form on the electric, it does say monthly. So if you do it at a higher frequency, is what I recommend per NFPA 14. And if you give me your business card, I will send you that to you. And you can decide whether that's advisable or not. But after doing all that, I would take this test and then grade it, of course. And if I do really good, then I pat myself on the back and say, well, I must be getting it together. If I do it not very good, then I know I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared. And you have to realize this is a code test. So, David, you have years of experience. Years of experience. I made the mistake of taking a lieutenant's test because I was at a busy engine company. We were going to 3 fires a day, literally, in San Francisco. And I thought I could sit down and pass the test. I didn't pass. I was a training officer for 7 years, teaching firefighters, fire science and all that. I took the captain's test. I didn't pass. Because the test was based on books, and I didn't study the books enough. So you can't go in just figuring, hey, I'm a journeyman. I got this down. I know how to run that fire pump. I know how to replace the packing gland. I know all that stuff because it's a code test. And there's the problem.
There's some oddball questions on it.
And there are.
You
There are
don't know
some
it, you
oddball
don't know it.
And
Yeah.
that's why you have to pay attention to Annex H that I handed out to you, because they do ask, like, what is the penalty for not having a certification? Is it a misdemeanor or a felony? And what is the fine? So what does that have to do with running a fire pump? But they threw that in, so be aware, okay?
That was scary.
I don't know what their motivation is.
Send me your $80 every year.
It just drives me nuts.
What do you think this whole process of being certified has helped the industry? Helped buildings?
Oh, I think so. I think so. Because you can't, when I was first doing this, there were many engineers that said, we don't run it deadheading, we pressurize our system, we want to check it out.
Wow.
How do you check out a 36-story building
You get
when
one-
nobody's in it and you're below a sprinkler head up on the 29th
You're
floor?
screwed.
What's wrong with
And
you?
you're running for 30 minutes just happy.
Plus, you're never going to get the pressure readings you should based on the design of the pump. Because the pump was designed in churn mode, not in pressure, you know, with supplying the system side. So I used to get that all the time. And then there was some other just, you know, old school way of doing things. You know, and the fire service has that too. Well, who taught you how to run the fire pump? Well, some great grandfather, you know, back when they had horses. And you know, the fire department's full of tradition. And some of the things they just don't do well. And they don't understand hydraulics. I could go down to Station 2 and I can tell you, ask a firefighter, that nozzle you have on that 1 3/4 hose, what flow rate would it have? My firefighters would have the answer. But I guarantee you, probably most of the firefighters at Station 2 wouldn't know the answer.
I can't get them to come here.
Really?
I have tried 12 different times. Their answer? Well, we have a different chief every week. They rotate in. And yeah, if you want to leave a message,
Well, you don't want to talk to the chief, you want to talk to the captain.
try, but I can't get called back. So I walk down there and sometimes interrupt their lunch.
Really?
They have great lunches.
Yeah, they do.
I had lunch with a couple times. They're like, oh, yeah, they're gone. Yeah, come back.
Well, my son, who's a lieutenant now, 2 of the chief's officers that are at that station now are probably the worst we have.
Because I'd asked, because we
The
set
worst.
up our radio communications in
Yeah.
our stairwells. Do you guys want to come down and check it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get down there. But we just got natural gas in our building. I want to show you, it's a little different than probably you're used to. Yeah, we'll get down there.
Well, I'm not going to interrupt their lunch, but I promise you I will call and speak to the engine captain.
I'd love to show them, because think about it, we have 2 buildings now, right?
Yeah.
They're interconnected with portals, it's different.
I'll speak to
Do they,
them
put it
and,
this way, you know where they come now? The entrance of the old hospital. In a month, they're gonna have to come down to this ED entrance. They don't even know it yet.
well, I'll do that for you and see if I can encourage them to come up, say I was just up there and things have changed around, you should be familiar with it.
We'll give them lunch.
It's a new
We'll give
operation.
them lunch.
You know, so, but I did that with an engineer down on Bush Street, because he had an odd building, the staircases and everything, and I called the captain of Station 13, and she said yes, 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 but knowing her, fire service has changed, unfortunately. I mandated my captains at San Mateo they had to get into buildings. I expected a report.
And good chiefs, they'll drive around when it's slow.
Yeah.
Take them offline, they're gonna go check out all these buildings, make sure everything's good.
Well, one of your battalion chiefs now, when he was a recruit going through the academy, was actually fired because he couldn't pass the written test. And lawsuit, he came back in, and he percolated up through somehow.
Yeah, with a good chief, you'll never have a flare up, because he'll leave his guys there to check.
Yeah.
There's certain things
Yeah.
you can look for.
So,
Test scheduling is gonna be up to the individual?
well, up to the state. So you decide whether you're gonna send it up 3 and 3, or however you're gonna do it, but send in your applications.
Also to the state, so they'll give you a date or?
They'll give you a date.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you can include in your cover letter saying, we have 6 engineers, can we do one week or 1 month and the other 3 the next month, that type of thing.
Because I'm gonna have trans, but set up fire pump training on that track.
Yeah.
Very short time, a week and a half or 2 weeks.
I should have pointed out, I apologize, your primary contact person, I listed in this handout, is on page 44, is Renee Rose.
Okay.
Jeffrey Schwartz is in charge of that part of the program.
Okay.
He usually only gets involved when it becomes a big issue or there's a regulation that needs to be explained.
Okay.
But otherwise, Renee should be it. Now Renee is like a little bird that's afraid she's gonna be eaten by a hawk. Renee is not like Vicky.
Right.
So Renee needs TLC.
Now, is there a standard time frame from the time you put in your application for the license L and for the?
They do, oh,
You know what I mean, like from the time you submit that, is there like a standard time frame that they give you a month, maybe 2 months or a few weeks before?
they supposedly do, but I've never heard that they actually do.
Okay,
That with them, it's as they can.
okay.
So you can get frustrated on their schedule,
Okay,
so you just have to be in contact with Renee,
okay, will do.
all right?
Coming down.
All right, guys. And if you do have McLennan or somebody come in to take a look or tell you,
Definitely, I'd
I'd like to
keep
hear
going
their
that email.
story.